Hello and welcome back for another episode of Snow Farms Underground podcast and YouTube channel. So it's all going to be one recording tonight. And let's see, today is the 1st of March 2023. This is episode 32 of the Snow Farms podcast. Andrea is not with me tonight. It's just me rolling solo in the sweet RV the sweet RV that I stay in during the week. So tonight we're going to be talking about, this episode, we're going to be talking about the recent project we got done, the house. So I refinished, taking down all the siding, pulled that all off. A big shout out to my best friend Adam Reinerson from Idaho. Came down for a week before Christmas. Man, just gave me the best touring in the world. Had the greatest time in the world. I talked to him tonight on that visit. It's a simple process. If you haven't done this before, this is a moderate handy. If you're moderately handy, as a guy on TV once said, if you can't be handsome, at least be handy. Moderate project as far as skill level. It is pretty much, is this level, or these even? So plumb, level, always, foundations of carpentry. And then the next thing we'll get into, it's heavy and it's ungainly. So we did that. I bought the 4x8 sheets of James Hardie siding from Lowe's. Lowe's, Home Depot, pretty much identical with this. It's going to be priced, depending on where you're at in the country, around $50 per sheet. It's 4x8, it's 32 square feet. You can figure out the square footage that you need. If you have 8 foot that you need to cover or less vertical, man, this stuff is fast. Ours was it depended on the wall. Some of the stuff was a little less than 7 foot. Most of it was between 7 and 7.5, just depending on which wall it was and how it went. So I was cutting off the bottom on each one. That non-perfect cut went at the top, and that got covered by a seam of James Hardie board. It is 1 inch thick by 3.5 inches wide. So that stuff is about $17 a board. It's spendy. It's 12 feet long. It is a bit fragile. If you drop it the wrong way, it's just going to break apart. But nailing, never had any problems with the nails. And once it's on, there's a 30-year warranty on all this up there. It is pre-primed. So you have 6 months after you put it up to paint it. And you need to use an acrylic latex paint. Not super expensive, not super cheap, but figure, depending on where you're at in the country, from $215 to $250 for 5 gallons of paint. 5 gallons of paint did all my trim, all the house, and I still have a little bit left. I bought 10 gallons because I'm like, so I'll probably end up putting a second coat on this fall if I get around to it. Otherwise, it's going to sit there until I need to paint it again. Hopefully 10 to 15 years, and that paint won't be any good, so we'll see what I can do to figure out on what to use that. It may end up, we have a shipping container that may end up getting primed, sanded where it has some rust in some spots. Prime that, throw that up there. So just a thought on what to do with extra paint if you have a shipping container laying around. So the 4x8 sheets, 32 feet, they weigh 74 pounds per sheet is what James Hardie claims they weigh. I don't know that it weighed that much. I was guessing between 50 and 60. It is really hard to pick them up because it's ungainly. It's 4 feet wide. To pick that up, carry it to the spot, and then get it on top to where the sides are plumb, going up and down by yourself with a second set of hands. And that Andrea helped quite a bit in this project. I had a there's a homeschool young man, awesome kid that helped me a ton. In the neighborhood with a second set of hands, super easy moving it. Let's see. Let me give you the cons. I'll give you the pluses here in a second. I'll give you the cons. Awkward to move. Corners were easily crushed. So if you put it on a corner either way, it was really easy for those corners to either break or chip. And the solution there is just to flip it over, put that up top where you can hide it underneath. And we did the board and batten style with trim up top. So there are ways to get around that. But if it's a showpiece and you break corners on both sides, you're going to have to cut those corners off, use it for another section. And at $50 a sheet, that's a pretty expensive mistake. So that's just one of those things. really well using everything. There wasn't a ton of waste. Just be mindful of that. And then whatever we don't use and whatever waste we have is just going to go towards other projects. I think we're going to end up, because I made a really great brooder when we were down in Milford, and I think it's just one sheet of this. This is what Andrea hates when I do this, when I just wander off in tangents. So this brooder is one sheet of plywood, and it's been out in the weather. It's 7-8 years old. It started to delaminate. I really believe if I'd put the Hardie board on top and on the sides, so the sides, it's 4 feet square on top. There are legs going down where the chicks can run underneath. There are 1 foot sides that do two things: capture the heat and also move allow the chicks in and keep everything out, and allow you to put the lights up on it. And you can do a heat lamp, you can do a 150 watt, you can do a 100 watt bulb, depending on what time of year it is. It is a fantastic brooder to let your little chicks, especially if you have differing ages, to exclude bigger chicks and just let the little ones in there eat whatever. And then your bigger chicks can sit on top, because that warmth transfers up, and the ones that start to have feathers, it's fantastic. So that's where a lot of the scrap wood's going to go. Back to the cons. You can't nail too close to the edge. Ask me how I know. It will blow out the sides. So I think 3/4 of an inch is probably as close as you should be trying to nail. An inch is better. You can get it right up to the edge, and you can get right up there until it blows it out. And then for us, I was covering all the seams with the bats, which were just the boards I talked about earlier. So even if you blow out the side, not the end of the world, but something to think about. You need to leave 1/8 inch gaps in between at a minimum. So it gives it room to expand and contract. And the cost and the heaviness, those are the cons. The pluses, it's pre-primed. Talked about that earlier. You have 6 months to paint it. It has 30-year warranty. It's insect proof. It's non-combustible. Now, here's the cool thing about this, and here's something to remember. So you can put a blowtorch on this stuff, and I think it's 1,500 degrees. It's something ridiculous. So it's not going to catch on fire. Everything behind your wall will eventually catch on fire. But what this buys you is time. So this is one of those things, if I was living out west in an area that had forest fires, wildfires, I would definitely look at this. And we have wildfires where we're at, so that's definitely part of this. The other part's having the green lawn and having that space between the pasture and the house. Insects, mice. And the nice thing about this, for me at least, it laid flat enough so that I had lap siding before. And there were lots of gaps in there, and that lap siding, there were all kinds of spiders more than anything else. No termites. I had one little section where a little family of mice had gotten into the insulation and made a home. It wasn't a huge amount of damage. It looked like it had just been one short infestation. But there is no room for anything to get in. It lays completely flat on top. And then the last thing versus lap siding. So one of the things that turned me away from going with the James Hardie lap siding is that if you don't do everything perfectly, it sounds like piano keys when the wind blows really hard. So with this, I've had it on now, I don't know, a couple weeks it's been finished, but we've had a majority of it on, especially around our room, for over a month. It's awesome. Wind noise dampening, as far as we don't hear nearly as much from the outside, so it does absorb some sound. I don't know, I think it's probably neutral, or if anything, it's going to add a little warmth to the house as it absorbs the sun. We counteracted that with going with a really light, bright paint to reflect that heat. So there's that. What did we cut it with? That's what I'm going to cover next. So I'm going to go down here to my notes. I bought, the guys at Home Depot were just awesome. Or I'm sorry, it was Lowe's. Boy, what a faux pas. So I went in there and I bought, I'm going to get it here. So it's DeWalt DCS 498 Bravo. It's a 20 volt max, which is, I think, just DeWalt's way for calling their 20 volt. Cordless fiber cement shears. I bought them. I didn't buy them at Lowe's. Now that I think about it, I bought that at Amazon. I caught it on a return, and I think it was $199. Didn't have a battery. Have a ton of the batteries. wasn't an issue. Those shears were awesome. So the biggest thing when you read about this stuff, you start researching it, is the dust when you cut it. And there's a little bit of health concern. You know, um, wear a respirator if you're cutting this stuff and you're in an enclosed space. I was outside. It's still, the cleanup gets in everything. These shears, there's no dust, there's no vibration. I could use my AirPods while I was doing it, continue to listen to the podcast. The shears are just gravy. It allows you to cut a super, super straight line. And you can go back and make little bitty adjustments too. So if you get something that's out of square on that, you can go back. If you have a little round, you can cut that round off. What else was great about it? It's quiet. Told you that. The battery lasted all day. The big thing about, so it's two shears on top, and underneath there's the power thing goes up through and basically just breaks it, for lack of a better term. I'm pretty sure you could get your finger caught in there. It might break your finger, worst case. It's not going to take your finger off. There wasn't a bunch of force. It's a super safe tool. Felt great using it. So if you're going to do the James Hardie, and whether it's the lap siding or the 4x8, worth your time to buy it. Now, whatever, I'm sure there's an equivalent with Milwaukee. I didn't look for Ryobi. I'm in the DeWalt ecosystem because the batteries, it's just like once you have Apple or Android, it's really hard to switch. So super happy with that for the money, doing this myself. We had a quote just for labor at just under $13,000. I think it was $12,900 to remove the siding and to put up the Hardie board. So we did that myself. Like I said, paid a neighbor kid for a little bit. My best friend came up, fed him like a rock star every day. We had a great time. And then the rest of it, I just did myself. Andrea helped. Huge investment in time. It took me, so minus 2 drill weekends, took me 4 weekends. So 8 full days, give or take. And then Adam came up for another 4. So call it 12 for the whole project. But that's removing siding, putting everything up, and by myself for at least half of that time. So if you, and this is my first time doing it, I think, and this is what I was talking with Andrea about, what a great little sideline. If it's the right style of building, of house, my goodness, I could do this with a young man, knowing what I know now, easily in 5 days. So it'd be long days, but it is not something that you can't do. So the last part, happy with that. If you get the fiber cement, either way, go with that. I'll throw in a bonus review. So Diablo, which Devil, all their stuff's red. They make a bunch of carbide cutting tips and stuff I've had in other tools. They make the only James Hardie approved saw blade for my table saw. Now, here's where I'm going to save you $60. Make sure that you point that blade in the right direction. Because if you have it reversed, you won't get through one, because I was trying to rip some of these Hardie boards, the 1 inch by 3.5. You won't get through one of those without ruining that blade, and it's worthless. Ask me how I know. So it's one of those things, but when you have it on the right way, it cut through everything like butter, never slowed down, as fast as I could go. So I had to make 24-degree angle cuts. We have a little, it juts out. It's a cool little feature. They converted a garage into, it's our media room now and library. And it just has some angles on it. It was super easy. So don't be afraid if you have some angle cuts. Now, before I got the Diablo blade, my buddy Adam, he took, it's a mortar blade, and he put it on. I have a 10-inch chop saw. It's an old, oh my goodness, I can see it. I can't remember the brand on it. Delta? It's Delta. And jerry rigged that on there. It did great. Kicked off a ton of dust. In hindsight, I would have bought 2 of those Diablo blades, put one on the chop saw for making the cuts, because that mortar blade took a bunch of product and it didn't make nearly as a precise cut. So just something I learned there. Free review. There you go. Do with it what you will. The last thing I want to talk about is I had The other tool I bought, and this was, so one of the great things about Andrew and I's marriage is early on, I don't know if this was her idea or if I talked her into it or if we just came to this agreement, but we're at the point now where every time I do a project that saves us money, it's much cheaper, I'll buy, whatever tools are required for that. And this project's no different. I bought a bunch of really good tools that either Samuel's going to be really like a man when I pass and he's going to get all these cool tools, or for the rest of my life at least, I'm going to get a ton of use out of them. So I got into the DeWalt ecosystem because Andrew's dad has DeWalt tools. He is a tradesman. Just making sure I thought that microphone wasn't plugged in. I was about to panic. He's a tradesman, and I was talking about him today. He's just an amazing man to watch work and how competent of a man he is. I was talking about him today about how intimidating it is to, here's a guy who can just fabricate, make anything, knows so much, and I feel very, very, it's very humbling to work with him and learn from him. But he had all DeWalt tools, so I'm like, well, they must be the best. So that's what I bought, and super happy with them. So that's how I ended up in DeWalt. I know Andrew right now is just thinking about, can I get this pencil all the way through my eye, or is it just going to hurt before? Anyways, last thing I'm going to review tonight is a DeWalt. Let's see here. Make sure I've got it, because I've got the name here where you can go on Amazon or buy this. I do not have the name. Anyways, it's a DeWalt 20 volt caulking gun. You'll find it. It is, the one I bought came with the big chub. So I think it's for the 29 ounce tubes. I didn't realize that when I bought it. That was a return, scream and deal with the battery. I think this one was, and it looked brand new. And I want to say it was $199 as well for the tool. This is one of those that I wouldn't recommend unless you have a huge project like I did. This whole house, whole barn or shop. And in hindsight, I could easily have gotten away with a really nice $25 manual caulking gun. I don't know how much better off it would have been. So I spent it's either $40 or $50 to get the small tubes, because that's what I bought when I went to Lowe's, and I got the order. For caulking, it's great. And by the end of the project now, I can fly through as fast as I can move and get in there. I can put the right amount of caulk in the right place, come back with my finger top to bottom, move the next. Honestly, the thing that slows me down the most right now, after one house doing it, is the small amount of caulk in the little tube. If I was going to do this professionally, I would go to the big, because then you would get a lot of run out of that. The weight, it is not a light tool at all. It is very heavy. It is awkward in tight spaces. For me, out there, like in a bathroom, wouldn't make a lick of sense. In tight quarters, doing showers, tubs, around sinks, all that stuff. But outside, it just makes a ton of sense, because you can get so much done. The beads even, you figure out where you're supposed to be. There's a little dial on the back for speed going forward. Does a really good job of being super consistent there. It talks about it has anti-drip feature on it. It tried. So when you run it and stop, it goes back like just a tiny little bit. There's a button on top of it that allows you to pull the entire arm back. What I started doing is, as soon as I got done on a long run, I'd push that button at the top, and it alleviates all the pressure, and then some a lot of the time. That did a great job of making sure it didn't have any drip, the extra coming out. It's not really an issue when you're doing this Hardie board, because you take whatever's extra of the caulk, you put over the stainless steel nails, and that's going to allow you to paint. You don't get the glisten through there, the paint stays on, all that stuff. So, but tight space is not good. Now, where this thing shined, and where this would make a ton of sense, is for a homeowner, professional homeowner, or somebody that's doing some stuff day in and day out, adhesives. So I had some liquid nails. There's some spots where the framing didn't match up, where there wasn't a 2x4 behind it when I was doing the bats. And to make sure that stuff stayed where it was supposed to, because the Hardie board itself, there's not a ton of, there's a lot of room for wiggle. And when you put the nail through, there's a little bit of extra space. So what I did is I just went in the back and put, it wasn't liquid nails, it was something I had in sale they said was just as good. And for as far as commercial adhesives go, I'm sure it was. I would just top to bottom, weaving it down, put that adhesive on there, and then stick that as hard as I could on there, slide it up to the top, put the nails in, caulk down the sides. That adhesive, having done that manually, it is a bear to get out, especially doing it a ton every day. This, you don't even feel it. It just comes out as even and as fast as you want it to. That's where this thing really shines. So that would be the one thing. If you're going to be doing anything that it is adhesive based, using a bunch of liquid nails and doing a repetitive thing over and over, go get this caulking gun right now. If you're doing board and bat, and I caulked everything, top, sides, it is fantastic. Your finger is what really pays the trigger. I still have a pretty good callus from running my finger up against everything to make it even. I have all the little tools that they'll try and sell you on Amazon. Your finger is a much better play. You can try and do latex gloves. They're going to rip really, really quickly. Ask me how I know these things. So those are the three things that I wanted to review tonight. I couldn't be happier about the project, how it turned out. Again, the guys there at Lowe's in Ardmore, Oklahoma, treated me right. Looks great. Super happy with the whole project. Value-wise, I couldn't be any more pleased for what we spent, and knowing that as far as the siding goes, I am good for the rest of my natural life. I'm going to have to paint it twice, tops, at 10 years on that. 30 years, I'll be in my late 70s. It'll be somebody else's problem. Hopefully by then, Sam, if you're watching this, that means you, buddy. Or whoever we sell the place to when that time comes to move back into town. Hopefully it doesn't, but so it goes. You can't control those things. If you're thinking about doing this, I had a couple buddies that had done this, because I was looking at, go back here, I was looking at fiberglass siding that was going to be, to have installed, we're at $23,000. For all the tools for, and that's nails, caulking. I bought a whole bunch of Tyvek that turned out I didn't need because I didn't pull any of the siding off, and there's cladding still there that was perfectly serviceable. And with this product, there are no seams for any water to get through. That, quarter inch behind one of these boards that's caulked on both sides. So, I mean, the ability for rain, bugs, anything to infiltrate. Adam and I talked about it, looked at it, got on with our lives versus trying to hang that Tyvek. But buying all these tools, everything, paint, the whole bit, right at $9,500. So was it a bunch of time and labor? Absolutely. Is that time, could I have made $14,000 doing anything else in that same amount of time? Absolutely not. So to me, that's a good value add. And then I learned I can, again, would I be a professional sider? No. But if I have a friend or family, man, I can make this project really, really fast for them. And if I did 4 or 5 more, I'm pretty sure I could do this. Now, a house with a bunch of angles and crazy things and want to be fancy? No. But square with a few angles, easy peasy. So, anyways, that's the episode for today. As always, thanks for listening. Andrew and I are having a ton of fun doing this. And I enjoy sharing this knowledge. And if nothing else, hopefully someday this will be something Sammy can look at and go, my dad talked a lot all the time. It wasn't just to me, it was all the time. But thanks for listening again. And tune in next time and we'll figure out what adventure comes next. But remember, every day is an opportunity to learn something new.